The diner was packed that afternoon, the usual lunch crowd buzzing with chatter. The smell of coffee and fried food filled the air as waitresses hurried between tables. Behind the counter, one waitress in particular moved with a sharp attitude, her lips pressed in a tight line as she eyed the customers. She had a habit of judging people the moment they walked in, especially if they didn't look like they could tip well. Near the window, a woman sat alone, quietly sipping her water. Her clothes were simple, worn-out jeans and a faded t-shirt, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail. She didn't look rich, and that was enough for the waitress to decide she wasn't worth much attention. When the woman politely asked for a menu, the waitress barely glanced at her, tossing it onto the table without a word. A few customers nearby noticed the rudeness but said nothing. The woman didn't react, just smiled softly and opened the menu. A few minutes later, the waitress returned, her tone dripping with impatience. "You ready to order or just gonna sit there all day?" The woman looked up, unfazed. "I'll have the garden salad, please. No dressing." The waitress scoffed. "That's it? You're gonna take up a table for a salad?" The woman blinked, surprised by the hostility. I can order something else if." "Whatever," the waitress cut her off, scribbling on her notepad. "Just don't expect special treatment." As she walked away, she muttered loud enough for others to hear, "Some people just don't know their place." The woman's cheeks warmed, but she stayed quiet. She was used to being overlooked, but outright disrespect was something else. Still, she didn't want to make a scene. Little did the waitress know, this wasn't just any woman. Outside the diner, the roar of a high-end engine cut through the street noise. A sleek black Porsche pulled up to the curb, its polished surface gleaming under the sun. The driver's door opened, and a tall man in an expensive suit stepped out, his sharp eyes scanning the diner. He walked in, the bell above the door jingling. Every head turned, his presence commanded attention. The waitress's expression instantly changed. Here was someone who looked like he could tip big. She rushed over, her voice suddenly sweet. "Welcome, sir. Table for one?" The man ignored her, his gaze locked on the woman by the window. Without a word, he walked straight to her table. The woman looked up, her face lighting up with surprise. "You're early." He smiled, bending down to kiss her forehead. "Couldn't wait to see you." The waitress froze. Her mouth went dry as she watched the man pull out his wallet and drop a stack of bills on the table, way more than the salad could ever cost. Then he turned to the waitress, his voice calm but firm. "You should learn to treat people with respect. You never know who they really are." Her face turned red. The entire diner had gone quiet, watching the scene unfold. The woman stood, slipping her hand into her husband's arm. She didn't say a word, didn't gloat. She just walked out with him, leaving the stunned waitress behind. As the Porsche drove off, the waitress realized her mistake. But it was too late. And this was only the beginning. The waitress stood frozen, the stack of cash on the table burning a hole in her pride. The entire diner had gone silent, all eyes on her. A few customers exchanged glances, some smirking, others shaking their heads. She could feel the heat creeping up her neck. She snatched up the money, stuffing it into her apron pocket before storming back to the counter. But her hands were shaking. That woman hadn't looked like much, just another nobody in old clothes. How was she supposed to know? At the register, the diner's owner, a gruff man in his 50s, narrowed his eyes at her. "What the hell was that?" he muttered under his breath. She clenched her jaw. "Nothing. Just some rich jerk showing off." The owner didn't look convinced. He had seen the way she treated customers before, but this time, it had backfired, badly. Meanwhile, outside, the black Porsche idled at the curb. The woman leaned back in the passenger seat, letting out a slow breath. "You okay?" her husband asked, his voice softer now. She nodded, but her fingers tapped lightly on her knee. Yeah. Just tired of people assuming things. He reached over, squeezing her hand. You're too nice. You should have put her in her place. She laughed, shaking her head. What good would that do? She's already embarrassed herself in front of everyone. He smirked. True. But I still don't like how she talked to you. Back inside the diner, the atmosphere had shifted. The waitress moved stiffly, avoiding eye contact with customers. A group of college kids at a corner table whispered loudly, making sure she heard. Guess she messed with the wrong person, huh? One of them said, grinning. The waitress gritted her teeth but said nothing. She just wanted her shift to end. But fate had other plans. A few minutes later, the diner's door swung open again. This time, a well-dressed woman in her 40s walked in, her sharp eyes scanning the room. She had an air of authority, like someone used to being in charge. The waitress hesitated, then forced a smile. Welcome. Table for one? The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she studied the waitress for a long moment before speaking. No. I'm here to see the owner. The waitress blinked. Can I ask why? The woman smiled, a cold, calculated smile. Because I own the building this diner is in. And after what I just saw, we need to have a little chat. The color drained from the waitress's face. The waitress's throat went dry. The owner of the building? This couldn't be happening. The well-dressed woman didn't wait for a response. She strode past the counter and straight into the back office where the diner's owner was sitting, hunched over paperwork. The waitress hesitated, then crept closer, straining to hear. Inside, the woman's voice was firm. I just got a call from one of my most important tenants, the man who leases the entire top floor of the business complex next door. Apparently, his wife was just humiliated in my property. The diner owner's face paled. Look, I had no idea. That's the problem, the woman cut in. You didn't know. But you should have. Your staff reflects on my business, and right now, that reflection is terrible. The waitress's stomach twisted. This was worse than she thought. Outside, the black Porsche was still there, idling by the curb. The billionaire husband had made a call, just one. And now, everything was unraveling. Back inside, the diner owner stormed out of the office, his face red. He jabbed a finger at the waitress. You. My office. Now. The other customers watched in silence as she shuffled after him, shoulders hunched. The second the door closed, he exploded. Do you have any idea what you've just cost me? That man owns half the block. And his wife, the woman you treated like garbage, runs a charity foundation that feeds hundreds of homeless people every week. The waitress swallowed hard. I didn't know. That's no excuse, he roared. You think it's okay to treat people like trash just because they don't look rich? News flash, real money doesn't need to flaunt itself. She stared at the floor, fists clenched. He took a deep breath, rubbing his temples. Pack your things. You're done here. Her head snapped up. What? You're firing me over one mistake? He laughed bitterly. Oh, this wasn't a mistake. This was who you are. And I don't want that kind of person serving my customers. Just then, the diner's front door chimed again. Everyone turned. Standing there, calm as ever, was the woman from earlier, the one in the faded t-shirt. And this time, she wasn't alone. The diner fell silent again as all eyes locked onto the woman in the doorway. She stood with quiet confidence, no trace of anger in her expression. Behind her, two men in construction vests waited, one holding a rolled-up set of blueprints. The waitress felt her stomach drop. What now? The woman walked straight to the counter, ignoring the stares. When she reached the owner, she extended her hand. "I think we got off on the wrong foot earlier," she said, her voice warm. The owner blinked, then shook her hand cautiously. I apologize for what happened. My employee was way out of line." The woman waved it off. "People make mistakes. But I'm actually here because I wanted to talk to you about something else." She gestured to the men behind her. "We're renovating the community center down the street, and I heard your diner supplies meals for local shelters. I'd love to discuss partnering together." The owner's eyes widened. This woman wasn't just wealthy, she was connected. And instead of demanding apologies, she was offering opportunities. The waitress watched from the office doorway, her face burning. Every word felt like another twist of the knife. The woman continued, "We'd cover all costs, of course. And we'd make sure your diner gets recognition for the work." The owner stammered, That's incredibly generous." She smiled. "It's what neighbors do." Then, for the first time, her gaze flicked to the waitress. A beat of silence passed. The waitress braced for the humiliation, the "I told you so" moment. But instead, the woman simply said, "Everyone deserves a chance to do better." No smirk. No lecture. Just grace. The waitress opened her mouth, but no words came out. Then, the billionaire husband reappeared in the doorway, car keys in hand. "Ready?" he asked his wife. She nodded, then turned back to the owner. "Think about it. No hard feelings either way." With that, she walked out, leaving the entire diner in stunned silence. As the Porsche pulled away, the waitress finally found her voice. I need to go." She untied her apron, tossed it on the counter, and hurried out the back door, before anyone could see the tears in her eyes. The back alley behind the diner smelled of grease and stale bread. The waitress kicked an empty soda can, sending it clattering against the dumpster. Her throat burned, not from the humid air, but from the shame crawling under her skin. "Everyone deserves a chance to do better." The words replayed in her head as she walked. Why hadn't that woman ripped into her? It would have been easier to take. Anger, she understood. Pity? That stung worse. A flicker of movement caught her eye. Near a boarded-up laundromat, an old woman struggled with a bulging grocery bag. The bottom split open, sending cans rolling into the gutter. The waitress hesitated. A week ago, she might have walked past. But now? "Need help?" she muttered, already crouching to grab a can of beans. The woman's face lit up. "Bless you, dear." Up close, her coat was frayed, her shoes held together with duct tape. The kind of customer the waitress would have ignored. As they repacked the bag, the old woman studied her. "Rough day?" The waitress snorted. "You could say that." She almost left it there, until the words tumbled out. "I screwed up. Judged someone by their clothes. Turns out they were different than I thought." The woman nodded like she understood. "Happens to the best of us. Funny how life teaches lessons, ain't it?" She patted the waitress's arm. "You're all right, kid." Something cracked in the waitress's chest. Back at the diner, the owner stared at the business card left on the counter. Community Outreach Director, Hope Ridge Foundation. His fingers tapped the laminate. One of the cooks whistled low. "You think she meant it? About the partnership?" Before he could answer, the bell jingled. The billionaire strode back in, alone this time. The owner stiffened. "Sir, No need." The man slid an envelope across the counter. "My wife wanted you to have this. No strings." Inside was a check covering 3 months' rent, and a note. "Good food brings people together. Let's keep doing that." 2 blocks away, the waitress stopped outside a thrift store. In the window, a help-wanted sign leaned against a mannequin. She wiped her face, took a deep breath, and reached for the door. The thrift store bell jingled differently than the diner's, softer, like wind chimes. The waitress hesitated inside the doorway, her eyes adjusting to the dim lighting. Racks of second-hand clothes stretched before her, smelling faintly of lavender and old paper. A voice called from behind a stack of books. "Be right with you." The waitress cleared her throat. "I'm, here about the job." A woman emerged, wiping dusty hands on her overalls. She had silver streaks in her braided hair and a smile that reached her eyes. Then her expression shifted. Recognition. "You work at the diner down the street, don't you?" The waitress's stomach dropped. "Great. Another person who knows." She braced for the lecture. But the woman just nodded toward the back room. "Help me sort these donations first. We'll talk while we work." Confused, the waitress followed. The back room was piled with boxes labeled Hope Ridge Foundation. Her pulse jumped. "That's the couple you met today?" The woman lifted a box cutter. "They supply half this inventory. Never take credit for it, either." She slid a box open, revealing stacks of winter coats. "Funny how the kindest folks often look like they've got nothing, huh?" The waitress picked up a coat, running her thumb over the stitching. It was good quality, better than anything she owned. Meanwhile, the diner owner stood on a chair, addressing his staff. "Starting tomorrow," he announced, "we're doing free breakfasts for shelter residents every Sunday." And, he took a deep breath. "We're raising everyone's wages by 15%. The cook dropped a spatula. "You hit your head or something?" The owner tapped the billionaire's check against his palm. "Nah. Just finally using my eyes." Back at the thrift store, the waitress tugged at a knotted plastic bag. It burst open, scattering children's shoes. As she gathered them, her fingers brushed a tiny leather loafer, scuffed but sturdy. The older woman sighed. "Those'll go fast. Lot of kids in this neighborhood outgrow shoes before parents can afford new ones." Something hot prickled behind the waitress's eyes. She thought of all the times she'd rolled hers at diner customers counting change. "You know," the woman said quietly, "this job doesn't pay much. But every morning, I get to watch a single mom find a coat that lets her walk to work warm. Or a kid pick out his first fancy shirt for job interviews." She held out a name tag. "You want it?" The waitress stared at the blank plastic. For the first time in years, her hands didn't feel empty. The waitress, former waitress, pinned the thrift store name tag to her shirt, the plastic cool against her fingers. It felt lighter than her diner apron, yet somehow more solid. The older woman, whose name was Gloria, she'd learned, handed her a pricing gun. "Rule number 1 here, everything has a story. Our job is to help it find the right next chapter." As they sorted through donations, the waitress noticed Gloria pausing over certain items, a faded baseball glove, a sequined purse, before setting them aside in a special bin. "What's that for?" she asked. Gloria smiled. "The no-price items. Some things aren't for selling. They're for giving at just the right moment." She held up the tiny leather loafer from earlier. "Like this. Belonged to a firefighter's kid who outgrew it after one wear. He insisted we save it for someone who'd really need." The front door burst open. A gust of wind sent a rack of scarves swaying. The billionaire's wife stood in the doorway, cheeks flushed, gripping 2 overstuffed garbage bags. "Gloria. Sorry to barge in, but we just cleared out the winter closets and..." She froze when she saw the waitress. An awkward silence settled over the thrift store. The waitress braced herself. Here it came, the reminder of her cruelty, the smug satisfaction of seeing her knocked down a peg. But the woman just hefted the bags onto the counter with a grunt. "Perfect timing. You can help me sort these. No anger. No fake forgiveness. Just work to do. The waitress blinked. You're not mad? The woman laughed, shaking out a cashmere sweater. Honey, I've got 3 charity galas this month and a plumbing crisis at the shelter. I don't have time to stay mad. She tossed the sweater at her. That'll fit you, by the way. Consider it a uniform. Gloria coughed pointedly at the no-price bin. The woman rolled her eyes but smiled. Fine, fine. Loaner uniform. Then she paused, studying the waitress properly for the first time. You know, we could use someone with thick skin at the foundation's outreach desk. The hours suck, but you'd get to tell entitled donors where to stick it. A startled laugh escaped the waitress. That a job offer? More like a trial by fire. The woman grinned. Interested? Outside, a car horn honked. The billionaire husband leaned out of the Porsche window, yelling, "Babe, the plumbing guy's on hold." Coming. She grabbed a stray mitten from the counter and chucked it at the waitress. Think about it. Gloria knows how to reach me. As the door closed behind her, Gloria chuckled. Told you she doesn't hold grudges.